The ancient city of Shechem, located in between the mountains of Ebal and Gerizim, is near present-day Nablus and dates back to about 2000 BC. Because the site is now in the Palestinian-controlled West Bank, few tourists ever come to see this impressive ruin. Formerly known as the ancient city at Tel Balata, this was a Canaanite city, and eventually it became the first capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. Shechem is mentioned in ancient Egyptian texts from the 19th century BC, and is also claimed by the patriarchal narratives in Genesis 12 and 33. The book of Genesis states that Abram and later Jacob visited Shechem. In between these visits, Shechem apparently grew and developed substantially. When Jacob returned there around 1700 BC, it was called a city and had been developed with massive walls and a temple. Unfortunately, this important ancient historical site has been neglected and abused. The site is surrounded by a rickety chain-link fence and is not very secure. You know, it's not every day you get to see something that's 4,000 years old. Well, today we get to. It's the ruins of a city that date back to about 2000 BC. I've driven to ancient Shechem, a city that, historically speaking, is one of enormous biblical importance. Now, it's located between Mount Gerizim to the south and Mount Ebal to the north. Now, Shechem, which today is a city called Nablus, was visited by Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, when God promised Abraham the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites. There, in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua copied on stones the law of Moses, which he had written. All Israel, aliens and citizens alike, with their elders, officials, and judges, were standing on both sides of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, facing those who carried it, the priests, who were Levites. Half of the people stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them in front of Mount Ebal. Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the curses. Years later, after the Israelites had been living in the Promised Land for some time, Joshua returned to these same mountains and again assembled all the tribes of Israel. It's here that Joshua calls the people out. It seems they had forgotten all God did for them, and they started worshiping the local gods of the nations they had just conquered. During the Israelite conquest, the Israelites apparently never had to conquer the city of Shechem because there's no evidence or mention of any battle that took place here. So there was probably some kind of an agreement or covenant that the Israelites made with the people of Shechem. Now, Joshua did gather the 12 tribes of Israel in the Shechem area to recite God's law, along with the curses and blessings that accompany obedience and disobedience. It's here that Joshua used his famous line, "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." The Israelites, powerfully moved by Joshua's speech, recommit themselves to God.